The black crime and violence in Philadelphia is now so bad. Even some of the fellas who work for black newspapers who are in the business of denial, deceit, and delusion, even some of them are starting to look around at what's going on in that town, and they're saying, hey, there's something really weird going on here. We're going to hear from that guy in a minute. But here's what touches off some of this discussion. The case of the white business guy who was killed last summer and who later on, a few weeks ago, a jury let the killer go free. The black killer go free. That story isn't going away. Tucker Carlson had the guy's mom on the other night shrieking for justice. She just can't get her mind around. Why is her son dead? Why is nobody in prison? She doesn't want to think about the whole idea that crime is the new black entitlement, and her son is dead and the killer is free because her son is white and the killer is black.
Philadelphia DA Larry Krasner has made it clear that his top priority is protecting the city's criminals rather than its law-abiding citizens. That's bad enough in the abstract, but it's easy to forget that this policy has real victims. It has destroyed the lives of real people. Michael White stabbed Sean Skellinger to death, allegedly after gloating online that he was about to, quote, cut someone. Despite that, and there's no dispute about it, he did it, Krasner would not even charge White with homicide. The case was weakened by that so badly that White in the end wound up with just probation. Now, last week, Philadelphia's Chestnut Hill College invited both Krasner and White to its, quote, Transforming Justice Conference. White was used as an example, a standout example of criminal justice reform. Linda Skellinger is the mother of the murdered man, Sean Skellinger. She recently spoke with us about all this. I'm sorry about this, and I can't imagine what it must be like for you to see the man who murdered your son held up as a hero. What is it like?
Outrageous. That's the word that comes to mind. It is really outrageous. They're parading this person around as an example of criminal justice reform. It is appalling to me that they would do such a thing. Obviously not understandable. Went to a conference on Friday for criminal justice. Larry Krasner was speaking. My intention was to see what Larry had to say, have an open mind about these things. And to my surprise, when I got there, Michael White, my son's killer, was on the agenda to speak on a panel. Outrageous.
It's hard to understand. It is outrageous, but it's also confusing. What was the point of this? Why would college administrators allow this to happen?
You know, I am not certain that the college was actually aware of what was happening. At least what they presented to me was that they were not aware that Michael White was who he was and that he was put on this panel. He did not end up actually speaking because at the 11th hour, they decided to change that agenda up and put two gentlemen who had been in prison for a very long time and had apparently not committed the murders that they were accused of many, many years ago. Right. Obviously, two people that, you know, would warrant speaking on a panel like that, rather than putting someone like Michael White up to make a mockery of the criminal justice reform that would be going on. I completely can't understand it except a political agenda by Larry Krasner and the defense attorney, Keir Bradford Gray. It's
so just for our viewers who aren't familiar, this is your second time on our show. We're happy to have you back. For our viewers who aren't familiar with the backstory, this murder took place in public. The man who stabbed your son to death, and they'd never met before, who stabbed him to death, later wrote a rap song about it. I mean, there's no question that he did it. So given that, what would you say to Larry Krasner, who's bragging about getting this guy off for your son's murder? What would you say to him?
I would say you are an evil and very sick man. I mean, it literally rises to that level. This is not just a disagreement around prosecutors' strategy or something like that. I think I had mentioned to you before, I believe that he obstructed justice, and that's exactly what happened. There's zero question that Michael plunged a knife into my son's back with eyewitnesses surrounding him on a lovely evening in July. None. Zero. So this was theater at its best. This was completely orchestrated by Larry Krasner right from the beginning, and it continues to be astounding. I mean, this panel discussion that they were going to put this person on, if I can even call him a person, he's a murderer, is, again, I keep using the word outrageous because it is so beyond my understanding of anything that makes any good common logical sense.
Okay, let's take a look at this article. It's called from thephillytrib.com. It just appeared on the same day that Tucker's article came out. It's just, the article will kind of tell you what it's about, but it's really surprising because this is not a place where the fellas are in there saying the fellas are causing lots of BS. No, they're the ones that are saying, A, it's not happening. B, white people do it too. C, white people deserve it. They're going to sing a different song today. So here's the headline. Time to get our cold-hearted boys under control. This is by John Mitchell. What's his name? Yeah, John Mitchell. I'm going to take this bullet for Mayor Jim Kenney, says John Mitchell, a good Irish Catholic man from South Philadelphia who has received significant support from the black community. However, as a white man, Kennedy is precluded from saying the bold things that certain black Philadelphians need to hear, things former Mayor Nutter said clearly, directly, and out of absolute necessity back in 2010. Then he goes into that one speech for 20 minutes where Nutter started telling the truth about black crime and violence. Back to the column. Well, in case you've tuned out the world around you, almost an impossibility today considering the reach of digital media and television, we're once again experiencing a seeming uptick in this type of behavior. It has been more malicious in nature as fewer merchants have suffered. But the human suffering from this behavior seems more noticeable. What hasn't changed, unless my eyes are lying to me, is that the demographics of the perpetrators of this barbaric behavior remain the same. They are predominantly young, black, and male. It's difficult for the mayor to address this problem the way Nutter did over his 2 terms. The Black Thought Police. Wow, the Black Thought Police? No matter how well-intentioned would make this racial as opposed to well-meaning. Kill the messenger. Yeah, that comes from a full card-carrying member of the Black Thought Police. And back to the column. There have been no arrests in the horrific beatdown of a 17-year-old Charm Sullivan. She was a young African-American girl. Got the crap kicked out of her at Mickey D's for not giving away free food. They kept beating her until they found her out in the parking lot, unconscious. The police have yet to identify the miscreants of the assault, but just as assuredly as the overwhelming number of the more than 300-plus victims of homicide in the city will be black by New Year's, is anyone willing to bet that Charm's assailants were African-American boys? If they are, and again, I promise you they will be, then they will be no different than the thugs who do their best to reinforce the negative stereotypes of black men as less than human, a misconception that many of us battle daily. Just the day before Charm was viciously attacked, a pack of suspected high school students were caught on video savagely kicking and punching a 50-year-old man into unconsciousness near the corner of 15th and Chestnut Streets. I wish I had been there. I would have told them not to go outside because those guys are crazy. Okay, I paraphrased that part. What is particularly troubling about all of this is that while this is happening, there are plenty of examples of more fitting role models, black men doing positive things that may influence peers of all ages to be civil. Then he gives as an example Puff Diddy and 50 Cent, who are supporting some black comedian in his lawsuit. Then he gives as another example of civil black behavior Colin Kaepernick, who has spent the last 3 years of his life teaching black people new ways to hate cops, teaching black children they do not have to cooperate with cops or talk to cops or give cops evidence, or for God's sake, you don't have to turn in any black person because the only reason that cops are down here is because of white racism. Yeah, you don't know that about Colin Kaepernick, and that's the best example of black civility you have to hold up? Wow. This whole thing's a little crazier than anybody thinks, isn't it? The behavior we've seen today, like it or not, puts that sort of negotiation on the table. I hate to tell you, he's talking about the negotiation that Kaepernick engages with his young children. Past behavior is a predictor of future behavior. There are basic societal rules that must be adhered to. Beating people senseless with no provocation is unacceptable. He finishes up by saying, these are not groups of Asians carrying this out. These are not the Irish, the Italians, Jews, or anyone else. These are black males who are mostly preying on black people. Well, maybe, maybe not. It is incumbent that parents, relatives, friends, and neighbors to set them back on the right path before something more tragic, such as a police bullet, does. Da, 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 da. It's amazing how close this was in tone and in content to us. An article that came out that we talked about in Don't Make the Black Kids Angry, written by a guy up in Indianapolis, a fella, an attorney. Yeah, he got sick of the black bullshit too. He wrote a big column where he didn't mince any words. So let's listen to Indianapolis attorney Abdul Hakim Shabazz, writing in a magazine called Indiana Barrister. It's time for some tough love in this town. There's a criminal element in this town that consists primarily of young black men. And he talks about some recent examples of stuff that happened there. Who are the bad guys? Say it with me. They are usually young black men. This may be painful, but the truth hurts. There is also something even more wrong when people will read this column and get mad at me and call me a sellout or an Uncle Tom because I was the guy brave enough to tell the truth. Here's the money quote. Indianapolis, you have a problem. Your problem is young black men who are out of control. It's time to step up and start making examples out of people. Decent citizens, black and white, should not have to live in fear of urban terrorists.
Please, sir. I want some more.
Anyway, we're talking about this at length on the podcast on Monday. I hope you'll check it out then. Hope you'll subscribe to this channel, subscribe to the podcast. You know the drill by now. Share, like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Feed the big algorithm in the sky so we can keep making the black kids angry.
Oh, do you have the time, good sir? I need to use your phone.